So now I'd like to introduce our panelists that we have this evening. What I'd ask is each of you just go around and introduce yourself and why you felt that you could serve this discussion topic this evening. And then after everyone has spoken, we'll then dive into some of our content, okay? So Robin, if you don't mind, please start us off.
Sure. My name is Robin Pope. I'm chair of ACA's board of directors, and I've been teaching paddling for about 35 years. Professionally, I'm a physician assistant working in otolaryngology and have been involved in kind of the medical side of COVID since our office shut down in March and didn't reopen until mid-May. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Robin. Next up, Jeremy, please go ahead.
Hey everybody, Jeremy Oyen, formerly in the SCI department. So a decade ago, I graciously turned it over to Kelsey, if you want to call it that. But I've been paddling and teaching for, I'll go with Rob and say 35-ish years, been a trainer since 94-ish. Currently the field operations manager for REI's outdoor programs, and very relevant with this because as we went into COVID, we completely shut down all of our field programming and personally stopped leading programs myself and built to coming back and have now been operating for a month our programs out there leading guided tours.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate you being here this evening. Janet, would you care to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Janet Cowie. I am the director of paddle sports at Zora Outdoor up here in Massachusetts. I'm actually celebrating my 25th year at Zora Outdoor. It's hard to believe, and I've been paddling for about 35 years too. So we've been dealing with the COVID with all our guided programs, our zipline canopy tour, rafting, and paddle sports. So it's a very unique time for us all to try to be a little flexible in what we do here. So I'm excited to have the discussion going on.
Thanks for being here, Janet. We really appreciate it. Ivan, man in outer space there. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kelsey. My name's Ivan Bartha. I own a small outdoor education company called One Planet Adventures. Have worked professionally in outdoor recreation for a long time. I'm an ACA instructor trainer and have been working at Vermilion Community College in Ely, Minnesota as an adjunct instructor. Very interested in outdoor leadership and what COVID is doing to that. And we've been operating outdoor leadership classes at Vermilion Community College pretty well this semester.
Thanks, Ivan. Really appreciate that. And last but not least, Mr. John Browning.
Thanks, Kelsey. John Browning. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on Lake Michigan, where I do a lot of my paddling. Been paddling since 1990, instructing since about 94 or so. And I'm currently the chair of the Coastal Kayak Committee. And back in April, I kind of started the ball rolling with a 2-page procedure sheet that I posted on our Facebook page for what to do in COVID. When I'm not doing ACA activities, I work full-time on an ambulance in the streets of Milwaukee. So I have up close and personal experience with COVID patients on a daily basis.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate you being here this evening. So my first question for our panelists is the obvious topic of why we're all here is that this COVID has brought forth a lot of risk and concerns that required a lot of research, at so many levels, assessment, and has resulted in a lot of modifications in your daily life, but certainly in your paddling programming. And I'm asking in all the different programs that each of you spoke about, what course delivery modifications were or currently are the most challenging for you? And then what are the most challenging for your students, if there is a significant difference? And you can speak as you see fit.
I guess I can start. I think we all are sort of trying to figure out how to teach in work in an environment where we have to be masked and socially distant. And in a sport where we teach, which is can be pretty intimate if people are dealing with fear issues or small group settings or rescue settings, it's been challenging to navigate how to do this properly and effectively. And what new norms do we have to put in place in order to keep ourselves doing the proper things? So I think for the instructors, my staff, myself included, that we've just been we want to do the right thing, provide the proper programming, but also put out an environment of that still we're having a good time out in the outdoors. We still want to provide that service. I think for our customers, it's trying to navigate what they can do and how they can participate effectively in the sport and continue. Because once they come to the class with us, it's hard to find clubs now to continue paddling or to do other things. So what are the jump off next steps? So I think there's a couple things. It's a long-term effect, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Janet. Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think for the work that we've been doing, we spent a lot of time looking at the what ifs and the how to's and what do we do. So an operational piece. So from an organizational, how do we operationalize it? What do we do? How do we keep things clean? How do we look at the health and safety of ourselves, our staff, and then obviously our participants as well? And what does that look like? Because the information that we get that we can research talks about wearing a mask is important. Now wearing a mask anytime is important. But we know that in water sports, as Janet was talking about, wearing a mask when it gets wet actually can create other panic aspects of it, because it's less comforting to do that, because you can actually reduce the amount of air that you can intake and output. So balancing that, working out the most stressful thing was actually putting the operations in place. Once we got into the actual execution of programming and getting out there, once you got on the water and you were socially distanced and you were spaced, it was another class. And we were able to manage that until we get to rescues. And then everybody gets really nervous again, because you do have to get close together. And the programming that I'm more referring to is more of the flat water coastal type of programming, as opposed to whitewater, where you can space out a little bit more. We looked at how do we operationalize, where do we do the programs? Do we do a full coastal program, or do we just stay at an intro level where it's like, okay, if you do happen to capsize and we're not ready for that, we're going to tow you a swim to shore. And building it that way, and honestly being really upfront with our staff and with the folks that are coming to us for that, about what are we going to be doing and how we're going to be doing it. It's been really cathartic and energizing that people are willing to play by the rules for the most part. And participate in that, and have had an amazing time, even when you put the COVID pieces in place, and they're very appreciative of that. At least that's from what we've seen.
Really great to hear. Thanks, Jeremy. To dive in a little bit on what you just said. So in addition to rescues, where usually you have to get really close and personal with some people, are there any other kinds of programming that you're not as comfortable conducting? That could be for anyone, of course, but as you said, rescues are challenging. Are there other pieces of the programming, like transportation and shuttling, or what other things have hit you hard?
Yeah, certainly transportation and shuttling is critical. And in the one program that I ran, and I only ran one program this year, it was with a group of people that I knew very well. 4 of us shared a house, and the other 3 people who joined us, but we had our own bubbles. And so, 2 of us shared a bathroom, and a married couple, they had their own bathroom. But when we had to do any shuttling, then, the person I shared the bathroom with, we were in the shuttle together. So we had the close connection. But when we had to set up a shuttle, then one person ended up riding in the back end of a pickup truck to go retrieve their car because they weren't part of that bubble. So it is an issue. I don't know how Ivan's done it with the courses that he's run. So
I'll jump off that, John. When we went virtual at the community college back in March, we basically finished out the semester. And as you can imagine, doing any sort of outdoor leadership courses online is tough. And we started the semester, a lot of our field-based courses, we looked at from really a detailed standpoint. And just to give you some examples of some of the things that we did, well, number one is being a public school, we were subject to whatever the Minnesota Department of Public Health had in place for us and the Minnesota State Colleges and University system had. We encouraged students to drive themselves to venues. And certainly what we were trying to do is isolate germ pools as much as possible because the community college there is residential. So I'll give you an example. We ran a 5-day canoe expedition in the Boundary Waters. And what we did was, instead of doing group meals, which is what we would typically do, we went to instant meals where all we had to do was heat water, and everybody had their own, instant meal for breakfasts and dinners. The other thing that we did was we tried to, as far as sleeping arrangements go, if somebody was on that trip, we tried to put roommates together for our permits. And then that way the germ pools were contained. If we had somebody that lived off campus or somebody that wasn't part of a germ pool, we put them in solo tents. So then obviously with canoeing itself, we're outdoors, we're, roughly 16 feet apart, and on portages, we're really the places that we had to kind of be very mindful and thoughtful about moving gear and whatnot. So that was one of the strategies that we had that I felt like was pretty successful.
Thanks, Ivan, that's great. Does anyone else have a comment in that regard?
Just up in Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, you couldn't mix groups. It had to be any of your clinics or rafting groups or zipline groups had to be trusted friend groups only. So we couldn't even put other unknown groups with unknown groups. So it made everything in a custom or private or semi-private way, which is a totally different dynamic. And then we had to actually hire or have just shuttle drivers just to shuttle a group of people. They get on the river, the driver goes and sanitizes the vehicle so that they can then do the next group. So there was all these systems into place to clean and sanitize gear and vehicles.
Robin, you want to go?
Teaching rescue classes, we did make a lot of use of mannequins so that we had a subject that we didn't actually have to worry about spreading germs, and then made a lot of effort to keep that clean. Within Swiftwater Rescue, it was surprising how often we could put students in N95 masks and provide a little bit of additional protection. They were close in contact, and then really spending a lot of time limiting the contact that they had. So if there was going to be close contact, we tried to limit it to just a few minutes, which does seem to reduce the risk of catching COVID. The other thing that we found successful was trying to establish the relationship with students well before the class started and start the screening process, start asking them to do health screens and health assessments a couple weeks in advance. And you really develop the relationship that allowed, in some cases, students to say, I'm not safe. I've been exposed, or I've had a fever, I've had some nausea, and have students drop out before the class.
Thanks, Robin. I'd like to take that comment and lead a little bit into somewhat yes or no or somewhat short story questions. And that is what you just said, Robin, is are you or your organization conducting health screenings ahead of time and when your clients arrive, or any other combination or process for that?
Sure. So I've been teaching with three groups. One is a scouting group where everybody knows everybody. Everybody is from the same town, and they're all day trips. Everybody runs their own shuttle. And for that, it's just an informal health assessment. For the other two programs, we've started health screenings in advance, and we do temperature screenings every day. Ask the staff to do temperature screenings in advance. And then everybody has to do a questionnaire. As I said, we've had students drop out because they failed the screening.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, in the one course that I did, we were all like Janet was describing, friends, and it was a group of people that I kind of had in a long-term development program, if you will. And in fact, in some of them, we were supposed to go to Tybee back in March, and the night before or the day before we were to leave, somebody woke up that morning and decided that we should cancel, and everybody agreed. And that was just after having a conference call the evening before. So I was all ready to pack my car and hit the road when I got the email in the morning. But we all knew each other. We did temperature screenings. We had, most of the people were self-isolating and working from home anyway, and very cautious. And it was everybody I knew personally. So I felt very comfortable with that group. But I was not comfortable in just opening up a class and saying, hey, I'm going to do an ICW. Who wants to come? I knew enough. I didn't want to do that. So.
Thanks, John. So I have a question for the group, and is that, do you or your organization provide PPE for your participants? Masks, gloves, any other hand sanitizer, things of that nature?
We at Zora, we always have extra. It's all about the extra, because you never know. And instructors had little sanitizing gels in their PFDs, but also we had extra masks in all the vehicles, at all the base spots, registration, and first aid kits and so forth. So there's always extra stuff around. It was so worth it just to have it, just if somebody got. We also had the famous best tool for instructors, the Ziploc bag. Where you put our guests were required on base to wear masks and in the transport to wear masks. And then we got little Ziploc bags where they could put their mask in it. So when they got off the river, had to get their mask back and so forth. So there were some, but there's always extras. You had to have it out there.
Yeah, and I'll say for two different groups. One for REI, we're in the extra category. We have extras. We make sure that we have those there so that folks are there. But it also relates to it kind of goes back to the last question. So this is the quick answer: is health screenings are critical. Informing on the website, doing it in person, and knowing that that's a standard. People expect that now. If you're not providing it, you actually look like you're not taking care of your customers. So it's actually critical that you have that. For the rafting company that I was guiding for this summer, they did provide buffs that were there. They were doubled up, so they were there, and that was required for folks. So it was an add-on that was there. If people had their own masks, great. But the extras, the Ziploc bags, all of that are critical to look at it. And people now are accustomed to, for the most part, at least in this area in the Northwest and many of our markets from an REI perspective, people are accustomed to having a mask and know that that's actually kind of a standard piece of equipment that they have. But we do put it on gear lists. We send them an email. We remind them in another email. And when they get there, we ask them if they have it. So really making sure that it's there.
I think that's setting the expectations up ahead of time and make sure that these are the new norms. This is what is expected. Everybody at base is having a good time. We're all masked. We're, socially distanced, and it's just part of our experience right now. And I think putting it on as what we can do and have a positive bend to it versus, oh, I got to wear this mask. It has sort of helped that, people come to us expecting, and send to all of us, expecting a certain standard of care, and that includes being prepared. So that was super important for us.
Yeah, hand sanitizer has always been a part of my kit. Anybody who's ever paddled with me knows that, when we pull up on shore and we're going to, have a lunch break or something, first thing out of my hatch is a bottle of hand sanitizer that I pass around because your hands have been in the water. But now with COVID, it's even more important. But I think, not only do we have, the standard of care, we have the duty to care. And, we have a duty to make sure that we have extras, that we have spares. And I think too, one of the things I would encourage people to look at is having somebody who has the responsibility just to, maybe your assistant instructor be the safety czar, if you will, making sure that people are maintaining distances, that they're not coughing into their hands and then touching something else and that sort of thing. So I think having a safety czar designated that's their responsibility might be a good idea as well.
Thanks, John. That's a good idea. So carrying a little bit farther along, what have you or your organization been doing like for equipment sanitation procedures?
Well, we've been doing both at the community college and at the raft company I was working for this summer is taking advantage of obviously ultraviolet light being one thing, and making sure that we have a good heavy rotation of our PFDs, splash tops and things like that hanging out in the sun. We're also doing daily washes, dunks with our equipment. And so basically what we've done is we set up a big rotation, added extra equipment so that everything had time to disinfect, dry, and then basically rotate back into inventory again. And that was a pretty good option for us. And then at the community college, most of the equipment that the students had was their own equipment. We purposely put it out there that if you've got your own PFD, if you've got your own splash top, any of that equipment, what we're trying to do is encourage them we're trying not to lend gear out.
Yeah, we've been doing an incredible amount of sanitation, with gear flipping. One is like Ivan said, is how do you manage that? What does it look like? We've developed specific operational standards for how often do things get cleaned. So after every program, we sanitize and we clean our boats, our paddles, our life jackets, all of those, even though they're single use, we make sure that they're actually being properly cleaned and sanitized with CDC guidance and what that looks like. And that's inclusive of when we launch, and we're looking at that, and I'm looking at it as more of an instructional program or a guided program right now, where we're launching, we're wiping the boat down before they actually paddle away. And when people are coming in, we're wiping we're wiping carry handles, we're wiping all those things as we go, so that we're consistently maintaining that. Additionally, when anybody comes, they are handed gear in a sanitized fashion. So we're wearing gloves, we're all that. So they're getting their individual gear, and they're told, this is your paddle, this is your PFD, and this is your boat. You need to make sure that you are maintaining that throughout the entire course of the day. Don't put your paddle down and forget which one's yours. They are numbered, so you're number 12, whatever it might be. So that's helped a lot, and it's created that ownership. So it puts the onus on the participant if it's not their personal gear. That's helped out quite a bit. It adds time at the beginning and the end for the sanitation, but then we know it's prepped and ready that if we need to have it going out the next day. We also have a standard that if we can't do a full sanitation, that gear will sit for around 72 hours before it even is thought about being utilized again. So if we're going to turn it around twice in a weekend or within 48 hours, it has to be fully taken care of. It can't just sit off to the side, which is above and beyond CDC guidelines. But when we're thinking about health and safety of our guides, that's number one. Customers is number two. And then we're able to move forward.
Do it again. Darn it. Sorry. Messed up last time too. Oh no. Does anyone else have some additional procedures they follow, or different procedures than the ones that were just shared? No. Okay. We may have already touched on this a little bit with the Ziploc bag question that you had talked about, Janet, but what are your mask wear standards while on the water in your programs? While on the water, that's the key point there.
Are you talking about instructors or guests, or both?
Either one.
Instructors in our organization are required to wear masks unless it's at a point where it would be not safe for them, but I'm wearing a mask all the time. I may drop it down if I'm across the river and I have to give some commands and then pull it back up. Clients are not wearing masks unless they choose to. But then there's a discussion. This is all about communication and sort of listening to what's going on there. So it's worked out really well. It was a little uncomfortable in first for the instructors to sort of figure out how they were going to talk. And if you've ever tried to figure out who your friends are when they have a mask on and you can only kind of tell them by their eyes, we communicate a lot with our face. So there was a whole other set of stuff going on with that too. But yeah, instructors wear masks.
They get really good at reading someone's feelings by their forehead.
Yes.
These days, yeah. Does anyone else have a different approach?
Really a similar approach, and using masks whenever feasible. So on land, using it pretty much all the time. On the water, using it when we were comfortable that people were not be underwater. But if somebody was going to be swimming or doing something else where they were likely to be underwater, it was okay to take it off. Generally, we used boofs, so you could put it around your neck, and as soon as you were back to a safe spot, wring that out and pull it back up. And then again, stuff where we really had to have close contacts, we issued N95 masks to students.
Anyone else on this question? Okay, I have one more before we delve into the questions that some of our attendees have asked. And my last question is, how do you stay up to date on your local guidelines and CDC guidelines, of course, but you know, how challenging is that for you? How often do you check? You know, how do you make sure that you're maintaining all the requirements in your state or your town?
I'm looking at the Massachusetts guidelines. The governor does weekly reports, so I'm listening to on a podcast, you know, every week, if not more than that. So it's always keeping up on what's going on in the state. You have to be up on this. Situation changed from when this all started in March till now. It continues to change. And as what we found is in our New England areas, some states suddenly went in the red, and then we had to email our whole customer base saying, now you're now red, so you now have to come with a negative test or be quarantined before you come to our program. So it was a constant communication and keeping up on that. But everything was pretty much online or in our state.
I'll tell you, being an EMS, I have no problem staying up on top of the requirements. I'm bombarded with them.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I think similar to Janet, we've actually set up a standard that we do a review. We ensure that we have a review. We actually created a survey for all of our teams that they have to complete every Monday, and then you make a determinations for the next week. And then we created a framework of what are the things that need to happen in order to do this type of program, and it allows us to just maintain that and locally own it. Our teams are on it. They're reviewing it, like Janet said, just about daily. If not more frequently as notifications come up. But we've set that standard of make a determination on Monday. Communications might come out Thursday or Friday about the following week, but just looking at the way that the CDC guidelines come out, they'll post an update, but it goes into effect on Friday. Great for when you're doing programs on Saturday. But typically there's at least a little bit of time for that so that we can actually operationalize it. And it's been successful, and it allows us to really see what are the ups and downs. And it's allowing us to see trends. And now we're looking forward as we're going, okay, cases are going up. What's happening in in Connecticut and Rhode Island relating to New York, what's happening in Seattle, what's happening there. So understanding your surrounding area is relatively easy once you find the links for the information that's relevant to outdoor programs. That's the hardest thing sometimes to find in your area.
We had to go through the there was a hotline set up with our the Minnesota governor's office to clarify any of those things related to specific industries as reopenings were happening. None of that's changed. It still seems to be the same. But one of the things that I discovered that was really interesting was at the state level, you look at like Minnesota Department of Public Health, but even at a county level, the County Department of Public Health in St. Louis County, which is from Duluth up to Ely, there was a public health advisor. It was a nurse that was sending out daily updates for the county. And then it was inconsistent. Then, some of the other counties I do things in didn't provide that and basically just deferred you back to the Minnesota Department of Public Health. So it's really interesting on a local level, county by county level, how inconsistent it is. So just an observation.
All right, thank you, Ivan. That's really thoughtful. Does anyone else have a comment? Okay. So what I'm going to do is to all of our attendees, we have a really quick poll for you. Okay, so what you're going to do is as soon as I enable the poll, you'll see the questions on the screen. You can select the answer that best suits you. There's 3 questions. And your answers to this will help our panelists understand the composition of our attendees and how to continue answering some of the questions of yours that we'll address shortly. Okay. We'll give about a minute and a half or so for you to answer these questions. Please go ahead as soon as you're ready. Thank you to everyone who participated in our poll this evening. The results are being shared here for you. So you can see the distribution of everyone in the audience this evening. I guess obviously one of the largest results here is, did you conduct any programming this year in 2020? And so we certainly have more people that did than did not, but it's interesting to see those percentages. So thank you. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is take some questions from the audience. Let's see, I answered a lot of these.
Kelsey, one major theme of the questions is everyone is wondering if you have a specific recommendation to sanitize all of your life jackets, your kayaks, all of that. So do you guys have any specific recommendations?
Well, I guess since I brought that up, yes, do it. if you want to know how we do it, we have a few different things. We do have some aerosol sprayers. We do have some different solutions that we utilize that will spray onto handles and wipe them down. Obviously, using nitrile gloves for our staff as we're doing that. We also use, see if I get the name right, Oxivir in a larger sprayer so that we can spray out a cockpit, and we can do that. We don't do it at the site. So we'll do actually the larger amount of sanitation off-site at a gear bank just to maintain water quality and not have effect on the waterways itself. But that's what we do for our equipment. For PFDs, we hand wash them. We have a cleaning setup, much like a rafting company does, where we'll actually do a multi-dip and we'll clean it off. And in that, we do actually utilize a little bit of elbow grease, not to wear them down, but to make sure that we're getting anything off of those. And then we hang everything out and make sure that it's able to dry. So recommendation to do it, yes. If folks want specific information, I'm sure we can get some details of what are the products that we use and information like that, and can share that with Carrie and Kelsey to get out to the group.
Jeremy. Yeah, so some of the questions that are being asked that are, within this realm here, are people using, COVID-specific waivers, liability waivers? And so I can definitely say that if you are using ACA's insurance program, we have a supplementary waiver. You can find it on our COVID-19 guidelines page. I'll share that link later for everyone to use, and you can also find it with this recording. I'll put it on the same page as well, which will be, again, all of the recordings for our sessions will be on the What's New part of the ACA's website. Someone asked, is anyone treating minors differently in any of these processes in terms of health screenings or mask wear or anything like that? Are there any differences?
I've done some programs with minors through Scouts, and the short answer is no in terms of screening. They're screened the same. However, I've required parents to be with them just to provide an extra layer of protection.
Thank you. All right.
Hey, Robin, I've got a quick question for you off the cuff. If your parents are sticking around, are you also health screening the parents?
Yes, I am health screening the parents. Yeah, everybody that's on site gets health screened.
Great. We're doing the same thing. So just wanted to see if it's aligned.
You guys. Let's see. There are lots of people asking about conducting rescues. I know a couple people in here have done some rescues with mannequins or other people-shaped items. Does anybody have any other unique ways that they've dealt with handling rescues?
It depends on whether it's a planned rescue as part of a class or an impromptu rescue. So for a class, using mannequins, really thinking about the spacing for people seems to work pretty well. For impromptu real rescues, making sure that instructors have masks. So often the student won't be masked, but the instructor, if they have a mask, can put it on right before making contact, and then really striving to keep the contact time as short as possible. And probably most importantly, looking for ways to avoid the rescue. So real beginner classes are tough because you expect that you're going to have to deal with them. Real advanced classes are tough because the scenarios kind of call for rescues. Looking for kind of the novice intermediate class seems to have been the sweet spot.
Hey, Robin, that sounds great. Amanda in the Q&A asked a good question. Have all of these guidelines and in some states very strict restrictions affected your company or your staff's culture or dynamic or morale?
I think, to be honest, it's been really tough to be an instructor this year. And they put out a lot of extra effort, and I applaud them all because it does affect, you feel a little isolated. You're not having big group gatherings at least in our program of, and also they're not co-teaching where they're learning from each other and kind of building off each other. So that dynamic changes. Trying to figure out who's, making sure all the protocols are followed and how that happens. I think it's pretty important that we recognize our staff or people that we're co-teaching with, that this has been a tough year, and we just need to listen to them, see what's going on. And one of my staff, who was a sex education instructor, said this year seemed like you need to communicate and have consent. Communicate about what's going on, and consent meaning like I can teach you rolling, or I'm not feeling comfortable, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want to get into a shuttle vehicle with you. Be really open about what's going on here, because this is pretty important that we as instructors feeling comfortable, as well as we're following protocol, as well as our staff are feeling comfortable in the process. So yeah, the culture is going to be different, and I think we have to recognize what that really means for us as paddle sport instructors as we step forward for our clients and our staff. I think I know who that was, by the way.
Does anyone else have a comment? So Janet or whoever else, have you seen noticeable change in the behavior of your students? It's certainly beginner students or students who are trying to make a significant jump up in their skill level, or try something brand new, might have anxiety about that. But do you see that they may be acting stressed out or otherwise scared for other reasons? Is this, all of these restrictions stressing them out in a different way? Or are they coming burdened with other problems that life may have thrown at them during this season? Do you see changes in your customers' behavior, your clients, your students?
I can go again if you want me to. So talking to before this whole thing, I talked to a bunch of my instructors, because they're in the front lines more than I these days. And some of the things that came up to the surface was folks that are coming out to paddle really want it. They want to be there. They're dedicated. They understand what's going on. And so they really want to be part of it. And so it feels like a stronger long-term participant than before COVID, where somebody may, oh, let's try it. Let's try this one. Let's try that. They seem pretty dedicated. And so that's kind of a cool thing, like a positive thing to come out, that people, long-term paddlers is what we always want. We want butts and boats. We want people to enjoy the outdoors. So it's pretty exciting. However, the other thing that people are coming out for is just to a little bit of a joy and escape from the craziness that's going on in the world with COVID. So they want to enjoy their environment and experience it. And so there's an appreciation, it seems, for clients that come out more this than it had in the past. Those are just some of my thoughts.
Thank you, Janet. You have good thoughts. Thank you for sharing them. Does anyone else want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% with what Janet's saying. The customers seem more willing to follow the rules. They're more willing to get out there because they want to escape. They want to get out of their house. They want to do that. And you're seeing that in just general recreation. But so it's not that they're more qualified and more interested in the progression, but they just want to go do something with other folks. Or, well, when I say with other folks, and this is something that we've seen, they want to go do something with people outside their home that are within what we call their COVID bubble or their cohort. So they want to do that, but they want to do it with a group that they know. And they're very willing to be really conscientious participants. Like, okay, I'm going to play by the rules, because if I don't, I'm not allowed to do this. And people are actually, I think, a little bit more aligned and understanding with that. So it's a flip that we can do that. But also getting back to that aspect of I just want to kind of go back to the instructors for just a second. This is extremely stressful for instructors. It's extremely stressful for administrators, everybody, because we know what we want to do. We know the joy that we can be there. But not only are we putting in other operations, we are still in a situation where cases are going up. so we can put a lot of health and safety protocols in place and standards, and there's still a chance. The challenge is that our business is doing this, and we love to do this, and we want to do this, but we're putting these extra parameters on there. And like Janet said, acknowledging that, having the empathy, having just listening and finding out what can we do, what can we go with, is there. But yeah, customers as well. But yeah, they're raring to go. And it's kind of crazy to see the amount that people are not willing to pay, but the amount of people that are willing to sign up for a class that is actually greater than it was maybe in 2019 at this time of the year, even though it's moving into a shoulder season for many markets.
Jeremy, thank you for that insight. Anyone else? Okay, so one other question that's being asked in the chat is, for those who are teaching courses or organizing events, how have you leveraged technology to substitute some content of your classes or of your programs that otherwise would have been in person? Okay, I can tell you that I have sat in on several Zoom calls for instructor trainers conducting courses who want, instruction on the course management system or on the ACA's website or the curriculum documents or different things that you might consider that you would usually have an in-classroom session, but you can do over a Zoom call. You can set up pre-coursework, reading, research, whatever that you want your students to do before they get there. And that may also shorten the duration of a class that you would usually, talk at them on those topics, so that, again, you're mitigating risk in multiple angles. Anybody here done that? Janet, you unmuted yourself. Are you trying to say something?
We haven't, but I do think that there's an opportunity there, and it's been something that myself and a few other folks have batted around for a long time. And I think right now, just kind of where I'm at, I just haven't been able to follow through with a lot of that because it's a tremendous amount of work. And if you don't do this full time, or if it's not part of your position, it's incredibly difficult. I just think about the amount of hours that I put in moving outdoor leadership classes to online. And even then I wasn't satisfied with the quality of the content or the interface of the learning. So I think it's a great opportunity. It's just super, super hard to implement. And especially, where you get into rural areas where a lot of people don't have access to decent internet, which is unfortunately my reality.
Anyone else? I'll talk to that one.
I think this was a strange year, as we all can agree. When June came around, we didn't know whether the state was going to allow us to run programs. And then it felt like, okay, in a week we're go, and so all those plans came up to play. I can see in the future that may, as we develop, because there's going to be something's going to be different next year than this year. But so that we have an opportunity as instructors.
Thanks, Janet. I totally agree. Another question that's being asked quite often in the chat is whether you've had to use it or not. What are your contact tracing plans or your action plans if you find out that one of your students or customers has tested positive after interacting in one of your courses?
Yeah, for students that I've worked with, first we did screening in advance and did have an episode where a student was exposed. He was a firefighter and transported a patient that had COVID. So he self-removed from the class because of the screening procedure. We asked students to be aware of what was going on for 2 weeks afterwards. And if any of them became sick, to let us know so that we could notify everybody else that was in the class.
Anybody else have a policy for your organization, even if you haven't had to use it?
Well, the way that we did it at the community college was the self-assessment was a green flag or a red flag for students to come onto campus or participate in any off-campus programs. And if somebody did test positive, we would get notification from our the gentleman who was director of operations that one of our students had tested positive. So that was about all the information that we had, and we kind of left it up to the administration to kind of vet out that information. I think that there's a real fine line right now I personally, I would tell everybody in the class if somebody had a COVID exposure. But again, as a state employee and adjunct instructor, it's a little different when you work for a state entity. So it's going to be a tough one. And I think that that's one of those pivot points that we're going to see change. Who knows how much, and probably take a cue from public school, from education and schools at this point. I don't know how parents are being notified if a classmate tests positive. So I think that that's going to be one that is going to be huge, is the notification process down the road.
Guess that's where, for us, we have a whole team. Luckily, it's being a bigger organization. Not, if I'm doing it individually, I'd have to look and say, how do we do it? But we do have a specific process to follow. We have guidelines of what communication can go out, and that's there. It's not something that can be publicly shared because it's REI specific. But I think if you are working with an organization, if you are running the programs, find out what the process is. That's the biggest thing, is make sure that there is a contact process. What does that look like? Because somebody, if you're working for, like Ivan said, the university, if you're working for a Parks and Rec, if you're working for REI, if you're working for anybody in today's day and age, if you have more than one employee, they should have some type of a policy relating to this, and reach out and ask. There's nothing wrong with that. And most people won't do that unless it happens. So if you can do it ahead of time, highly recommend that.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's great. So we've got about 5 minutes left in our session this evening, and I'd like to close it out with one last bit, which is, have there been any modifications, to your courses or events, or your protocols, procedures that you expect to keep into the future? And I guess, are you keeping them because you think that they will continue to build on the health and safety mindset that we have for all outdoor activities, paddling or otherwise? And, how do we just continue to promote these activities in the safest way possible? Can you say it again, Ivan?
Isn't that that's the $1 million question right there? Is how is this? I mean, again, I think that the privilege of being on this panel with this crew is that there's just an incredible wealth of knowledge and sort of a mind's eye to not only where we've been, how we've reopened and whatnot, but just kind of thinking things out for the future. And I'm not sure how much influence we're going to have on that. I think that, we have to kind of think on our feet and be prepared for whatever's next. Because as we've had in some prior discussions with the panel, this is going to change potentially next week, in 30 days, and 3 months, and 6 months, maybe by the start of 2021 paddling season, we might be having a completely different discussion. And I think that's what makes it so challenging and very stressful, as Jeremy points out.
I would say from us, we're not planning on pulling anything off for quite some time. What's the timeline? I have no idea, but we are not going to scale back our health and safety protocols, health and safety standards until we're really sure that we are ready to do it. So we're going to be conservative we're gonna probably do it longer than other folks because we'd rather be that way, because health and safety is first.
Just what he said, pretty much.
Oh my gosh. All right, anyone else want to attempt to answer that question? Well, I would welcome any final remarks that any of you may have. If I did not ask a question that you wanted to address, now would be the time.
I think one thing I'm watching the Q&A, and I really want whoever has been watching this to know how much I appreciate the questions being posed, the challenges that people are exploring, and some of the sort of the continuity of care that people are talking about. I wish I see 57 unanswered questions there, and I wish I could answer every one of them, but there's just no way that we can. It's so interesting how regional and specific this is. Hopefully maybe we come back a year from now and we revisit this, and some of those questions will be a little easier to answer. So I just want to say to whoever has been logged in, thanks for all those questions. You definitely got me thinking about a few things.
Along that same line, do we have a list of those questions? Have we captured those? Because I think some of them can be answered.
Yes, I'll capture them for you, John.
Okay, good. And I know I saw some of the questions that people were asking about specific products, and it varies. The CDC does have a list on their website of products to use in cleaning equipment. I can tell you on the ambulance, we're real big on every ambulance is outfitted with a sprayer bottle, just a quart-sized bottle that we refill at the start of every shift. And when we need to, we have a product called Quat, and it's used in the healthcare industry. You just spray it down, leave it for 10 minutes, wipe it off, and it's good to go. And so that's a product. Lysol disinfectant spray is also very good, but it's also very hard to come by. So there are times that we're even as the largest ambulance company in the state of Wisconsin, we're frequently out of it. So, but Quat, we seem to have no issue getting that.
Robin, Janet, you guys want to make any closing remarks?
Yeah, I just want to thank all the panelists for contributing to this and everyone that has participated. It's clear in the discussion and the questions that are coming up that people are really putting a lot of thought and effort into this. And the challenge is that it's a challenge. There is no easy answer in some cases. The easy answer really is stay home and don't paddle. And I don't think any of us really want to go that way. We want to figure out a way to as safely as possible go out and have fun on the water. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Steve Henkin, the physician that helped develop the protocols that are on the ACA website. I just want to give a shout out to him. Thanks everybody for participating tonight.
If you haven't, be sure to read those protocols. It's an important piece of information. A lot of good stuff there. So read it.
Yeah, John, on that note, we will be sharing this recording of this session along with the link to those guidelines and protocol that everyone's been discussing on the What's New part of the ACA website, but we'll also include it in our post-conference survey. Okay, so this will be sent to you also. And we'd also love your feedback about this and any other sessions that you attend. And as everyone else said, thank you for being here this evening and for asking your questions, for listening to what everyone has to say. It really means a lot that you're here. And everyone on our panel, personally and professionally, thank you. It's because of your expertise and your experience with conducting courses this year and your willingness to share it with everyone that we can talk about this and share information and resources and help people get their programs back going when it's appropriate and continue to all have a good time, having paddling. That's what it's all about, having fun.
Yeah.
We want to be healthy and safe. That's the goal.
And huge thanks to Kelsey and to Carrie for herding the cats to get us all on a call together. Fantastic. I'm glad we're able to pull this group together. And even though we can't see all the 120 plus participants that are out there, you know, love connecting with all of you, and thanks for putting this together.
Thank you everyone for being here. Have a pleasant evening. Please come back and join us tomorrow for more of our sessions.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.